something went badly wrong a very long time ago, and I have nothing to do with that. If I'm already in attachment or aversion or whatever, then that's the outcome, and now I can only either act upon it or see how I can dissipate it. But that's the reality, and I should know for next time.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's, I think one of the key things with this, to stop this, is this acceptance. You know, accept the present moment. Because the present moment is the present moment. You know, if we accept it, then we can do something. We can act. So, because we want the present moment to be other than it is. And that's what causes the problem. So if we just accept that in the present moment this is what's happening, okay, then we act. Then we either just watch it, or we apply an antidote, or whatever. And then we can deal with it.
I have a comment regarding the compassion, to activate compassion at this point.
At this point?
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a colleague at my work, we work together, and we had a dispute, and I said, okay, I come with compassion, and I listened to him, and so he talked, and I couldn't, I felt my heart closing, I just couldn't.
Couldn't what?
I got offended.
Offended?
And I couldn't give him any compassion or anything.
Yeah, but remember, compassion, if necessary, can be forceful.
Yeah, so that's my problem.
Yeah, so that's why we need to add wisdom. Otherwise, we'll just sit there and people will like hammer at us. And then in some ways we're sort of encouraging them to keep doing that.
Yeah, I just wanted to...
Yeah, so...
But some people like me, when I'm not getting angry, my reaction is freezing. Like I don't say.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand the compassion in the beginning. Good, I think. Only after this experience, he was a very good teacher.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, again, compassion is all about trying to help that person. And if that person's going on and on and on about something, we need to try and stop that in whatever way we can, and not just sit there and allow them to do that, because then we'll do this and then they'll keep going, and then that's not helpful for anyone. So we always need to have the wisdom with the compassion. And of course, the one other thing here is what we were talking about earlier, the cognitive fusion. That I think what is very helpful, what I found very helpful with all of these things here, is avoid cognitive fusion. That if you can really see, not like there's a bad person, but if you can really see there's a person really doing a bad thing, if you can really think and speak that way, I think you'll find it's more difficult to get angry, and it's much more easy to have compassion. That's my experience. So if we can really just shift that way of thinking and speaking, it's going to make it a lot easier to avoid the mental afflictions and to really respond to difficult situations with love and compassion.
You see that he's suffering?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's like not saying, you know, irritating person. I mean, as soon as you say irritating person, you can say this person is saying irritating things.
The thing is that part of the things that he said were true.
Right. So then, if it were true, you should say thank you for...
After that, I actually did.
Good.
But during the session, I couldn't...
Yeah. I mean, that's right. I mean, if someone's criticising us, normally we react. But again, because we're doing the cognitive fusion thing, we're identifying. But rather, if someone's criticising us, we listen. And if what they said is true and it's highlighting something we need to work on, we can say thank you. And if what they say is just rubbish, we just ignore it. We just ignore it. let's say we didn't, yeah.
If the attachment is to an idea, not a person or an object, so how can I imagine the idea getting old or changing? Because an idea,
Your ideas
not
never
idea, like
change?
a concept.
Your ideas never change?
No, like if you're attached to certain concepts, let's say attached to success, okay? So success is success. Of course, it can come in many ways, and it can come success with the family, with the relationships, with the work, with everything. But it's still a concept. So how can you imagine it getting old or getting like less beautiful than what you think it is?
Well, you probably wouldn't use that for the concept then, would you?
Again?
You probably wouldn't use that way of dealing with that attachment to a concept.
I don't know. In the meditation, I use my attachment to success, and then I try to imagine like getting old or changing. And
Well, even your idea of success changes.
yes, but I didn't feel like it made like it was different.
Mm-hmm.
It like it made it less attractive to me when it's changing. It's not like a thing that is very beautiful if someone is attached to like a ring, and then the ring is getting old and it's changing and it's getting stained or something. It's not the same. And so if you're attached to idea, to that's example, but there are lots of other examples.
Just watch the attachment. Watch it. And then try to find the concept that you're attached to.
That easy. I know, I found some other things.
Okay. Let's say we didn't manage to do much at step 4 and we've got to step 5. And so we've acted, and and we've actually covered this already, but it's, I think, helpful to go over it again. Let's say we've done some harmful behaviour, and the Buddhist assertion, of course, is if we've done a harmful behaviour, the result will be some sort of suffering we'll get from that. So, of course, we don't want to experience that suffering. So what can we do at step 5 to avoid going to step 6? The 4 somethings, yes, those 4 things. So what we can do here is purify our mind of that negative habit, that negative imprint. And this is called the 4 opponent powers. So if we've done something harmful, this is a way to purify the mind of those negative habits and negative imprint. And the first one, of course, is regret. To have sincere regret for having done that negative behaviour. Already that's weakening the imprint and the habit. Of course, big difference between regret and guilt. Guilt is based on cognitive fusion.
Not to get to guilt. Not to get to guilt. I say it's not to get to guilty.
Yeah, so we never need to feel guilty about anything because it's based on cognitive fusion. It's a false perspective. And all that guilt does is it makes us feel bad and paralyses us. It doesn't even address the negative behaviour. Whereas if we adopt the correct perspective and rather than seeing I'm a bad person and feel guilty, we acknowledge I did a harmful thing, then we can have regret for the action. And then also we can do, of course, what's called reliance, sometimes translated as foundation. And what the second step is about is, reaffirming our positive direction in life. That's what reliance means. Because we all have a positive direction in life we're trying to follow. And if we've done something harmful, we've fallen down from that. So the second step is about picking ourselves back up and reaffirming that positive direction of our life. Here, of course, in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, that generally would include this going for refuge that we briefly mentioned, and cultivating or generating this bodhicitta, because that is our direction in the Mahayana, the aspiration for enlightenment for the benefit of others. If we're not Buddhist, this may be something like, I want to benefit others as much as I can in my life. That's an example. Or I want to be ethical in my life. I want to really be a very ethical person. Whatever the positive direction is, we reaffirm that, so that helps. The third one is remedy, meaning think of some sort of practical remedy for the negative thing we did. So again, example, we verbally abuse someone at work, so a good remedy would be apologise. So something positive opposite to what we did. If that's not possible, for whatever reason, any virtuous activity with the motivation of wishing to overcome that negative habit is effective. And then the fourth one, by the way, the long-term remedy, of course, is the wisdom of emptiness. Because all negative imprints are based on ignorance, and so if we wipe out ignorance, we'll wipe out all negative imprints. So that's the long-term remedy. Short-term, some practical, positive, opposite action. And the last one, of course, is resolve, to make a strong determination not to do that negative behaviour again. So if we do those four things, when we've noticed we've done something harmful, that will start to purify the mind of negative imprints, negative habits. But let's say we didn't manage to do that, and now we're at step 6. And so now, and I want to again just focus on actual suffering result. So in the moment, we're experiencing some sort of suffering result. Can we do anything now to change that? Or to affect it? Tonglen is excellent. But before there's something at the beginning. Just observe. So again, what you will find is that, like at step 2 and 4, if we can just observe that unpleasant situation arising, then we won't have aversion, because it's our aversion or our resistance to that unpleasant experience we're having that creates a lot of suffering, as I showed with the knee example from the Vipashyana retreat, that this aversion, wanting it to go away, just creates most of the suffering. And there's a nice saying there, pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. For us, suffering seems to be mandatory as well. So as long as we have aversion, then suffering is mandatory as well. So that's what we can do first, is we can just be the mindful, just watch it, not to have the aversion and thereby magnify the suffering. But in addition to that, of course, we can do the Tonglen practice, which I think I mentioned earlier, is to make that difficult situation a meaningful one by using that as an opportunity to cultivate loving kindness and compassion for others. And we used that example before, I think, of the migraine headache, that now if we have a migraine headache, we may go, oh, not that, it can go away. And of course, as soon as we do the aversion, more suffering. So acceptance, and then go, can I resolve this? And maybe with medication we know it doesn't really work. No. Then we can apply impermanence. This too shall pass. And then in addition, we can do the Tonglen. We can understand there are many others who have a similar unpleasant situation like a migraine headache now. So by me willingly accepting this, may all others be free of theirs and take all their migraine headaches from them and give them happiness. So we can use this difficult situation to cultivate loving kindness and compassion, and you often find that when we do that, because now we're focusing on others and not ourselves, it may even overwhelm any discomfort we may experience in the moment. And then there's one more thing we can do, of course, and that is the same as at step, well, actually a few steps here, but certainly at step 4, is where is the me that is having this suffering experience? And if you look for the me, you don't find, then the target has gone, and then it really is pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. Because there's no target anymore for the suffering. You've just released it. So that's a few things we can do at 6. That's all I really wanted to cover. Any last questions?
The emptiness is the to understand the identification with me,
Sorry.
to release it. All the emptiness
Factors.
it's like to release.
To release the grasping.
I call it identification that it's mine. Like this suffering is mine. To realize that it's not mine because there is no me.
Well, in that sense, yes. There's no owner.
There is no owner, and the feeling that there is no owner, I personally get it when I'm in the shamatha of awareness.
Correct. So what? And I think I mentioned this earlier. No, actually, it's coming tomorrow. I haven't mentioned it yet. But what you'll find is if you're in the shamatha, particularly in that awareness, you can release the grasping a little bit because of that shamatha state. So that will be very helpful for this. But that's a temporary reduction in grasping because of being in that state. Whereas in the Vipashyana, of course, we are eliminating the grasping by realizing there is no me. But in the shamatha, it's just temporarily gone dormant a little bit. So that's going to be very helpful. And I'll talk a bit more about that tomorrow.
So in shamatha, I can ask where is the me?
But then you're in Vipashyana. Then you've gone into Vipashyana mode. That's okay. That's okay.
Just to ask if it's where is the me?
And that's okay. Yeah, I mean, then you go. I mean, that's what you do. You're in shamatha, and then you ask the question. Then you've gone into Vipashyana practice, looking for the me. Where's the me here?
So that makes it stronger, not to identify with all what I have.
Because you're actually seeing that there is no owner there. Whereas in shamatha, it's just temporarily sort of dissipated because you're in that mental state.
What is interrupting me here, it's like to stop and ask, where is the me? It's like, I think I have to feel it in myself.
Yeah, but I mean, once you understand the practice, then it's more of a sort of an instinctive thing. You're not really...
That's why, yes.
But initially, like any practice, you have to give a bit of commentary to know what you're doing.
Okay.
But then once you're familiar, then it's just like a...
So just to do the meditation again and again and again. Okay, thank you.
Is there a degree of emptiness, or is it a...
Degree.
Yeah.
You mean Yeah, we're going to talk about that tomorrow as well. There are stages we go through, so that's one of the... tomorrow, one of the topics for tomorrow.
This chart or the whole practice or method that you gave, it makes a lot of sense. But in daily life, the first 4 or 5 steps happen very quickly.
Correct.
Even if you have a lot of mindfulness and you pick it up, and then there is stage, I don't even know which state I'm in, and there's so many different things that can apply. Emptiness, watching, I don't know what to do.
That's why we start with mindfulness. See, that's why we need to start with mindfulness, because mindfulness, I mean, for all of this, without mindfulness, you're right. Before you know it, you're down here. Exactly. So that's why whatever effort we can put into the shamatha practice, you will start to notice in daily life that you can start to catch, particularly if the stimulus is not strong. I mean, if it's very strong, then of course it'll be very quick. But you'll start to notice, like, if it's not so strong, with some mindfulness, you'll start to notice a little bit of irritation coming, maybe, and you go, oh, look at that. Whereas now you don't notice it, and before you notice it, you're like, argh. But if you have some mindfulness, you'll notice that and you go, oh, look at that. And then you'll just go, shoo. So you'll find that if we put some effort into the mindfulness in shamatha, but also to be really present in daily life, that you'll start to have some little impact here, particularly on things that are not so strong. And then, of course, as you improve, you'll be able to even more and more stronger things. So that'll take time, though. But you will find...
But then how can you distinguish between which step I'm in?
It doesn't matter. If you're just using mindfulness, you just observe what's there. Whether it happens to be just something pleasant, unpleasant, or whether it happens to be some little mental affliction that is arising. You don't have to go, where am I? You just observe what's there.
No, you're right.
You just observe what's there. So that's where you start. And if you start to do that, then you can start to add some of the other things on top of that. But if you haven't got the mindfulness, then you're right. Before you know it, you're down here. And then it's too late. I mean, like I said, if you're down here, the only thing you can do is get out of there fast before you say and do something you're going to regret. That's the sort of the backup strategy. Keep the mouth shut and get out fast. But of course...
So basically start with mindfulness, watch where I am, like wherever I can do it, the first few, I don't know, weeks, months, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And then eventually I can start.
And then if you start doing some Vipashyana practice and you start to get a little bit into the emptiness, then we can start to do a little bit of this, where is the beauty, and those sort of things. But that comes on top of the mindfulness. Because without mindfulness, you're not even going to be able to do that. So start just the mindfulness, and then and you will find that it will start to have some impact.
Of course, you must remember that these stages are just labels
Sure.
of a continuous thing. That
Sure.
So there's nothing like to recognize in a way that and just isn't.
I said that it's work.
It's
Work.
That it works.
It works.
Yeah.
Good. I hope so.
No, I'm in deep problem, deep serious problem, and the expert just I say a word or name the police. And I play decently, quiet, quiet, like in this system. And they get out from, they get nuts.
Someone, whenever the boss or somebody sees him, he has aversion towards him.
Uh-huh.
Huh?
הוא אמר שיש מישהו שכאילו הסביר שהזכרת שיש איזה מישהו שכאילו ברגע שאתה פוגש אותו, שאתה אומר משהו, אז יש לו כלפיך התנגדות, דחייה כלפיך.
Okay, I think that's all we wanted to cover this evening, so let's go to the Shavasana meditation to finish the day. You simply become aware of sensations throughout the body. And using the out breath to relax and release any tightness or tension in any part of the body. And softening and relaxing all the muscles in the face. In this way, allowing the entire body to become completely relaxed, completely at ease.